Commission Christian Radio presents Nicodemus, the Faithful Pharisee by Colm Flanagan. Episode 1, Journey to Galilee.
It's a very old saying that some people are great while others have greatness thrust upon them. I certainly wouldn't say I fit in either category, but if even I get near, it's not because of any great skill, but because I happened to be there when it all occurred. I suspect that's true of nearly everybody who's been involved, as I was, in something very important, even life-changing. I met a man called Jesus who changed my life. It was actually many years ago, but I can remember the events very clearly. I suppose you could say the start of my story was the day I was asked to go on a long journey. Hello, I'm home.
And about time too, Nicodemus. What on earth kept you this late? As if I didn't know.
Meet my wife, Elizabeth. She was now used to me coming in later. As a member of the Sanhedrin, the Jewish religious rulers, I often had to work late because of disputes about how our laws should be applied. There were many laws and lots of problems. Elizabeth and I have been married for many years, and she is still my counsellor and friend.
What was it tonight, Nicodemus, love? You look worn out.
Oh, it was rules about the Holy Sabbath. Up in Galilee, of all places. Some wandering preacher up there has bested some of the local leaders, and they want clarification of what you can and can't do on our Sabbath day. Well, as far as I'm concerned, I tell them to read the scriptures and make their own minds up and sort it. Anyway, it turns out that even among our own Sanhedrin, there's no unanimity about the interpretation of the rules in question. So we took a long time to get nowhere, really.
It sounds just like a courtroom. No one ever gains, except the lawyers. Only you're paid a lot less.
Well, that's certainly true. But if I'd wanted money, I should have chosen a different life.
I know that, love. It's one of the things I admire about you.
Oh, you admire me, do you? That's good to know.
Well, some of the time. Look, do you want anything to eat?
No, I think I'll just have a cool drink. The night's warm in the city.
Yes, I'll have one too. And then I think it's time we both went to bed. You look worn out with debate.
The next day, as usual, I had some teaching to do. The students, or disciples as they were known, provided stimulation to my own brain as well as theirs. I decided to have a seminar on the topic of the Sabbath day, and wasn't surprised to hear many conflicting views. Then, just before lunchtime, I received a summons to see Samuel, one of the leaders of the Sanhedrin.
Shalom, Nicodemus. Thank you for coming to see me. Will you have some refreshment? We can discuss our business after a light meal.
Thank you, Samuel. That would be very pleasant. I was glad of the break, and Samuel, true to his word, did not bring up any business until we'd both finished our meal and were sitting in the courtyard.
Nicodemus, can you guess why I want to speak to you?
To be honest, I can't.
Tell me, do you enjoy travel?
Well, I have occasionally visited some relatives on the coast and around Jerusalem, but I'm not widely travelled.
Well, look, I'll come to the point. Would you be prepared to make a visit, perhaps for some weeks, to the Galilee area?
Well, I have commitments to family and students here, but what for?
You will remember last night's debate.
Clearly.
Well, this isn't the first we've heard of this preacher, Jesus from Nazareth.
Really?
Yep. He's creating quite a bit of a stir among some folks up there. Claims of healing, even one of turning water into wine.
Well, you know what country stories are like. They lose nothing in the telling.
Well, indeed. But nevertheless, people seem to be starting to take sides, and the Sanhedrin does not want to interfere. But we would like someone reliable to have a look around. Talk to some of the people involved. See what's really going on so we can decide, if necessary, whether to do anything or not. Would you be willing to do this?
I see. Well, I must speak to my wife about it. I know there's a grandson expected here soon, and I don't wish to be away for a protracted period.
I don't expect you to stay out there for a long time. I know it's about a week's journey to get there, but it's pretty country by the lake. We would, of course, arrange good accommodation for you and Elizabeth, if she's prepared to go.
May I take some time to think about this and talk it over with her?
Oh, of course.
I have one other question, Samuel.
Which is?
Why me?
I want someone to go who has a capability for thinking outside the raw legalities of our faith. Someone who has a genuinely fresh mind and is prepared to see things as they are, rather than through a legal prism, if you see what I mean.
I do, though sometimes I wonder whether it's a gift or a curse.
Oh, it's a gift, believe me. I'm not the only man who thinks you're the best person to do this.
I appreciate the trust you're placing in me. I'll give you my answer as soon as I can.
Well, I'm more than happy with that. Let me show you out and give my regards to Elizabeth.
Later that evening, I spoke to Elizabeth. So, that's what Samuel was talking to me about.
I see. Well, on the one hand, I'd like to be here when Joanna has her baby. But as long as the visit isn't going to take too long, I have no objections. Do you really want to go?
Well, at first I thought let them get on with it at the local level. But, well, maybe a trip to the north would be worth doing. I've never been there, and they say it's a lovely part of the world beside the Lake of Galilee.
You maybe don't know this, but I have some far-out relatives who live up there. Some of my family way back were actually fishermen on the lake. Who knows? Maybe some of them are still doing that. I might ask around and do a bit of family tracing while you're sorting the Sabbath rules out.
Well, I'll tell Samuel that we'll go. I'll speak to him in the morning and we can start making arrangements.
How long a journey is it, Nicodemus?
Well, I understand it's about 5-6 days or so, obviously depending on the speed of travel. Most people walk the whole way down the road to Jericho, then up by the lakeside. There are a number of small villages and towns at the head of the lake.
That seems a bit of a long way round. Do you not go straight north from Jerusalem? We're on the west side of the city here in Bethany.
Well, yes, but that would mean travelling through Samaria.
Oh, of course. I don't think that would be a good idea.
I know. Jews and Samaritans don't mix. I've always thought it a shame, really. We both claim to follow the one true God, yet we fight with each other.
I've never really understood why it's so bitter.
Long-standing differences just get stronger and stronger as the years pass. Every little insult builds up and up. Oh, I suppose it's how we all are. Makes us feel better and superior to others. Goes back to the Garden of Eden, I suppose, when Adam disobeyed God.
Yes. Well, let's get started on the packing. It won't do itself. And I'll need to tell the servants that they'll have to look after the place for a month or so.
Soon after, we set off on the journey north to Galilee. We had with us 2 servants and a donkey for the luggage. There were parts of the road which had a bad reputation, so it made sense to travel as a group, and we met with some others who were making the same journey. We arrived at Capernaum without any incident. It seemed a good place to start, as the synagogue leaders there had been to the front among those who had requested help.
Welcome, Nicodemus. It is good to see you. Are you rested after your journey? I hope you find your accommodation satisfactory.
Oh yes, indeed, Reuben. It's very comfortable. And Elizabeth has started a search for her relations. I think she's glad we came.
That's good. Sometimes we feel very far away from Jerusalem.
Well, I'm here to help, not to dictate to you and your other leaders.
Yes, I hope that we'll be able to reassert our position.
Do you think you've seemed to be lacking in knowledge of the scriptures?
Well, I suppose you could put it that way, but some things have been happening which give us concern and have caused some confusion.
Confusion?
There's one person I'd like you to meet. When you hear what he has to say, maybe it'll give you a better picture.
As you wish.
In fact, I took the liberty of asking him to join us. His name is Isaac, and he's one of our elders. He's waiting in the courtyard, and I've arranged for some refreshment for us there.
Lead on then. The day's getting warmer and a cool drink would be very much appreciated. Isaac turned out to be a small man, perhaps a little pompous. In our general conversation, I got the impression of someone who did rather like being centre stage, so to speak. He was clearly pleased to see someone from Jerusalem, and he was eager to tell his story too.
What do you think, Rabbi? Is it lawful for people to be healed on the Sabbath?
That's not a question I've thought much about, Isaac. But Why have you raised it? Are you suggesting that healing should be classified as work?
But this is exactly the point I need to be clarified, Rabbi.
Well, the commandment doesn't mention healing as work, Isaac.
Yes, but surely it is the work of a physician to heal.
Oh, I see. But is it not true that God is a God of healing, both of mind and spirits? And if someone is healed, thanks are given to God, for this is his work. If someone is healed on a Sabbath, will God the healer regard that as violating his day?
I think you should tell Nicodemus your story, Isaac, to give him the context.
No, very well. No, as you know, Rabbi Nicodemus, it is the custom here to glean the fields and eat the grain left by the farmers and their pickers. Well, one day 2 of us were listening to a man called Jesus, a sort of wandering teacher. His father was a carpenter, good at his trade, but no scholar. I'd known the family before, and Jesus has had no proper religious training. As I say, he and his disciples were in a cornfield, and they began to pick up the husks and eat the grain. Well, naturally, we challenged them, for the day was the Sabbath, and such things are not permitted under the law. And he replied, "Surely you have read what David did when he and his followers were hungry. He went into the house of God and took the sacred loaves of bread that only the priests were supposed to eat. He not only ate some himself, but he gave it to his followers. And then he said, 'The Son of Man is Lord over the Sabbath.'" Well, I ask you, what kind of a statement is that?
Well, for the first part, Brother Isaac, I do not think the law forbids the act of eating. After all, God provided his people food for the Sabbath when they were in the desert. He no longer supplies us directly as he did then, but it is clear that he does not require fasting on the Sabbath, though it is a good practice to deny ourselves from time to time.
But what about the name he called himself, Nicodemus? The Son of Man? How do you read that?
Well, that is much more difficult. Tell me some more about this man.
Well, he comes from Nazareth. That in itself is problematical.
What do you mean by that?
Can any good thing come out of Nazareth?
What?
Well, it's a saying around these parts. You see, Nazareth is a pretty wild place near the Samaritan border. I needn't tell you about it.
No, I'm well aware of the hostility between Jews and Samaritans. You think that this Jesus is a troublemaker from a troubled town with untrustworthy neighbours where they don't obey the law. Presumably Jewish law?
Maybe the Roman law as well, but I don't care about that.
You seem to have your mind made up, Isaac.
Yes, of course I have.
Then may I suggest that we put aside ingrained prejudice and discuss realities?
I am not prejudiced.
But the Son of Man, Nicodemus.
Exactly. Now let's discuss all this calmly with regard to what our law actually says and what is to be gleaned from it before jumping to any conclusions. We had a long talk. It became clear to me that what I'd thought at first was wrong. This was not just a petty argument about elements of the Sabbath laws. There was more under the surface, much more. Reuben and Isaac had heard other reports of what this man Jesus was saying, and it certainly wasn't what we would have expected from an itinerant rabbi with little knowledge of the scriptures. This man seemed not only to know them, but also to be suggesting his knowledge came directly from God. I made my way back to our accommodation, where I met Elizabeth back from her relative hunting. And what she told me began to make me realise that here in Galilee, something strange was happening.
In the story of Nicodemus, the faithful Pharisee, the part of Nicodemus was played by Mark Clanny. Other parts were played by members of the Commission radio drama team. The play was written and produced at Commission Studios in Belfast by Colm Flanagan. Episode 2 is entitled Sent by God